Sure. Welcome.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Hey.
Welcome to Meet the Author from the Charlotte Hobbs Memorial Library in Lovell, Maine. This series is sponsored by Bridgeton Books in Bridgeton, Maine, and White Birch Books in North Conway, New Hampshire. In both of these places, you'll be able to get our author's book after December 14th. And today, I am speaking with Jim Ford. Jim's a first-time author. He was born in Massachusetts, and he's always wanted to be an actor, and along the way, it found him traveling around the world, and he's got a lot of energy.
Look out.
I guess I would just like to introduce Jim Ford. Tell us about yourself, Jim.
Hey, Sue, thanks so much for having me. I'm excited to be here. Yeah, I was born in central Massachusetts, a little sleeping town outside of Worcester. And, I just had a great childhood. We had a huge backyard with woods and everything. And, my childhood, it was just filled with games and adventure. And I really didn't think much about the future. Just thought about what are we going to play this weekend? What are we going to do? And had a big group of friends. Some I'd play traditional sports with, some I'd do kind of the extreme sports. And when it came time to get serious and say, hey, what are you going to do when you grow up? I thought, I'll just be a professional athlete, or I'll be a professional skateboarder. And when that didn't work out, I was like, well, I'm going to go into film and television. And thankfully, miraculously, it worked out pretty quickly. And I've been a full-time actor and a stuntman for about 15 years. And I've never had another job. I've just been working steady and consistently ever since. And it's been quite the adventure. And at some point, even when I was a little kid, I did want to write, screenplays, and I would. And at some point I said, you know what, I got to write a book. I really got to write something. And I didn't just want it to be a memoir of, my career, or, I met Tom Cruise. That I think would get boring. But one thing that kind of happened unexpectedly was I was traveling. I was just traveling a ton. I was traveling for work, and some years I would work in 14 or 15 different states. And then I would travel, for vacation. I would travel for film festivals, and I was just all over the place, and I couldn't believe it. And then it got to the point when I was almost at 50. I was almost at 50 states, and I was probably early 30s, 32, 33. And that's when I kind of had the idea to write a book, to say, hey, this is kind of the through line. It's not just I worked on this movie or I worked on this, but my take on all 50 states. And that was the through line was traveling. And that's when I kind of said, hey, I think I might have something here. And it took a while, years and years of writing and editing and notes and rejection. And my gosh, I thought it would be easier. But
that was actually one of my questions. How long did this actually take from beginning to end, idea to, publish?
Yeah, well, that's it. So from the idea was probably, I probably still had 4 or 5 states to go. And I was probably about, 32 when that happened. And then I did start kind of just playing around with chapters and almost just for fun, messing around. And then I think when I got to 49, I was like, no, I'm really going to do this. When I came back from 50, I started writing. I would say it was probably 2.5 years of just hard writing. Like if I wasn't working, I was just writing 8 hours a day. And there were some times like I just wouldn't leave. And some of it was good. Some of it was just horrible, but I was just writing. Like no one told me to do. I just kept writing. And then when it was done, I did hire some editors and stuff to kind of keep my voice, but get it grammatically presentable. That was the challenge. I either had some really, stiff upper lip type guys where I was like, it was grammatically perfect, but that wasn't how I talked, or it was just too loose. So that was the challenge. I think probably another 6 months or a year of just heavy editing. And then it took I thought, great, I'm done. You're welcome. Like it would just be out there, but that was, wow. Then it was like starting over again. Then it's like you're done with the book. Now you're like halfway done. Then it was trying to get it out there and find a publisher and send it out. So yeah, it was probably about 5 years, I think, from idea to completion. Yeah.
Wow.
And then,
Oh, I'm impressed that you sat and wrote for 8 hours. That was going to be another question. If you had a schedule or anything like that, or a special place where you write. I know some authors that just go to a place like Starbucks.
oh yeah. No, I don't really do the Starbucks. I use their bathroom from time to time. I'll occasionally, grab a tea, but I'm not one of those laptop in public type guys. I had a computer. I edit short films and I do stuff for work on the computer. And I don't even know if it was the biggest program. I just had Pages, and there was just something inside me that told me I had to do it. I've always been kind of very driven. I'm not that distracted with the internet or social media. Some people are like, where'd you find the time? I said, I don't know. I'm not on social media. There would be days if work got
Exactly.
pushed or something, I had a couple of days off. I'd be like, I really want to get this book done. And I didn't have a schedule. And I think it was kind of neat that I didn't really talk to someone and get their advice on how to write a book. Because I think if I did that, it might have been overwhelming, or it might have been too much of structured, and it would have came out differently. So I just kind of said, let's just go for it. And I did outline a little something. I have some, the whiteboards, and I did kind of say, well, at this point I want to get here, and at this point I have to put this in, and I would just do it. And there were times when I was like, oh, this will never happen. I'll be 50 before this thing's done. But sure enough, I just kept chipping away. And there were times when work got busy and stuff, and I'd put it to bed for 3 months or 4 months. I was like, man, I got to get back at this. And I can remember there was a time too. I was working on this TV show, The Following, and I was hanging from a roof, and I was like, man, I really hope this goes well. Like it was a scary thing, and I was kind of, to get me through it, I was making kind of deals, like, all right. When I'm back on the ground and I can have a beer safely, I was like, I'm gonna freaking hustle out another 50 pages or 100 pages, and I remember that was kind of towards the end, and I got it the first draft done, and I was like, wow, what a feeling. And then you still have years to go. But that was a big day when I finally finished that. Yeah.
Would you like to read a little bit from your book?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll take the first one I want to read. This is an interesting chapter, because one thing about the book that I found so interesting to me was, with work, it wasn't just LA or New York. It was, work was taking me not just to different states, but to crazy places. I mean, there were some times when I would work in a frozen river in Utah, hours away from civilization. And one of the most interesting jobs I had was, this film was called Runner Runner. Justin Timberlake is in it. Ben Affleck's in it. No one's ever heard of it because it didn't do good at theaters, but it's great on DVD. And it was really fun because they flew me out to Puerto Rico. And it was just such a unique thing. I didn't know what to expect. But this is just about a page from this chapter in Puerto Rico. And the film is called Runner Runner. So this film was badass. I got to drive a souped-up Maserati spiritedly on a scenic cliff road for one of those classic big budget wide shots. I also got to ride on $1 million boat that was owned by a professional baseball player. I had to ride on the back as the bad guys watched over me, and a camera boat caught the shot. If you watch the film, it's the scene where they take Richie out to see the alligators. We did a bunch of foot chase scenes in all different neighborhoods and rooftops. We also stayed in the San Juan area, which was on the other side of Rincon. We filmed a ton of running scenes around there. I can't believe they're paying me for this. The best part about this movie was that it was filmed to look like Costa Rica. So we were shooting an hour away from the hotel, in jungles, in odd neighborhoods. One time we filmed a scene in a very dangerous area. The police had nothing to do with this place. Drug dealers and gangs controlled the gates. Some agreement had to be made prior with a local on the crew to allow us in there. It was beautiful in a natural and very different way. Some houses didn't even have doors or roofs on them. It was a shanty town. We were amongst barking pit bulls and trash-littered streets. old ladies were selling ice cream for a quarter. This was not on the tourist map. When we had to leave, some drug dealer had to signal for someone to let us out and open the gate. It was an experience just to be allowed into these streets.
Adventures.
Yeah, adventures. And so that was one of the things, you know, it wasn't just like working on a set. Like we would be working in these shanty towns and in these colorful villages and just these crazy places that were kind of off the beaten path. And I just felt very blessed and very privileged to kind of get to see this, you know. It wasn't a typical office, you know. It would sometimes it'd be a parking garage that was abandoned, or, you know, a rooftop or overlooking the city. So there's a lot of visuals in there, a lot of locations about panoramic views and what I'm seeing. And every now and then it's more about the visuals and the landscape, but there are some stories from set peppered in there throughout. So I thought that was a good example of that showed both. Yeah.
I like the dedication at the beginning of your book, and I'm wondering if you, maybe now that you've published the book, do you think you'll get a dirt bike for Christmas this year?
Oh, I'm glad you read that. Yeah, you know, I was thinking a lot about that. And my lovely wife was wondering if she would get the dedication, and I really did just have to. It says, yeah, I think it was, I dedicate this book to my parents, even though they never bought me a dirt bike. And, you know, my brother even called me and said, he goes, that's right on, man. He goes, that was our childhood. Great parents. They showed us a lot of things, made a lot of sacrifices for us, but they never let us have a gun. They never let us, you know, shoot a BB gun. They never gave us a dirt bike. They were always, you know, very strict. And I think maybe that was part of why we were so adventurous, is because, you know, they did, you know, if they gave us that, maybe I would have been like, whatever, cool, I've done everything, you know.
Well, cheers to your parents for keeping you alive.
I know. They did a good job. And yeah, maybe this Christmas I'll ask for that, either a pony or a dirt bike.
And both your parents are still with us. I enjoyed the story about your dad and the fireworks. I was wondering if fireworks are a special thing with you and your dad now.
That's interesting, because I think what made me think about that was I'm trying to think of New Hampshire. And in my budding opinion, when I was younger, you know, I didn't know about the Kankamankas. I didn't know about all these beautiful, to me, New Hampshire was just getting fireworks. That's all New Hampshire was to me. Maybe it was about going up there, sneaking past the border, getting fireworks and come back. So it was much more for me and my friends than my dad. My dad, he loved fireworks. You know, he was a firefighter in Worcester, Massachusetts for, I think, 40, maybe 42 years.
Wow.
Yeah, he was the youngest guy on. Don't quote me, but approximately, I think he was on when he was 19, and he went right till the end, 63 or 64, as long as you could do it. Okay. So he's a big fire guy, and he loved to go to, you know, July 4th fireworks and all this stuff. But then if I had them, he'd be like, hey, what are you doing? No, we can't. I go, Dad, you're a firefighter. You love fireworks. And he was very, very strict. But there was that one day when I just saw it and was curious. And he was like, all right, quick, let's go out in the backyard. And we had a little paved, basketball court, just like a half court where we could dribble the ball. And, you know, we had our little dog there, and oh man, we shot a whole bunch. And one of them, it went up, and we're in a very sleeping town, a very quiet town. Nothing happens there. Like the police log is like dog barking, officer responded. So if you lit off one of those mortars, the whole town was talking about it. And that's what we did one day. Yeah, it was pretty fun.
You want to read some more from your book?
Yeah, I'll read another one. I think this is neat. Let me see. The second one is, this is when I got to about, I think I was at 47. So this is when I could kind of see the end. The name of this title is called Arkansas and All 48. So here we go. I was burning gas from Memphis, Tennessee, across the Mississippi River, seconds away from the Arkansas state line in my 47th state. I could see the state sign in the distance, slowly coming into focus. My heart was racing. The hairs on my arms stood tall. This was it. This was one of those travel moments. Stiffen the sinews. This was the state I'd always wondered about. On my placemat, I always envisioned it barren and filled with flat brown rocks. I loved that I knew no one who went there. The less a state is visited, the more I want to see it. This was uncharted territory. Nobody's opinion was affecting my decisions or swaying my take on it. There were zero suggestions from friends and family. This was pure. I didn't know anyone who even knew someone who'd been to Arkansas. I mean, you don't sit around the dinner table and hear people tell stories about the Bear State. So I could now see clearly the sign on top of the bridge read, "Welcome to Arkansas, the natural state. Buckle up for safety." I drove underneath the glorious white sign and started yelling, "Yes, yes, yes, I'm in Arkansas. 47 states and counting. This is legit. This is real. I'm doing it, baby." Dramatic pause. What the heck do I do now? And yeah, so that was it. It was one of these things. I was so excited to go see. I was so excited to see Arkansas because at this point, you know, I only had a couple left. And I remember calling Danielle, my wife. I was at the airport because work had gotten pushed. And it was just so last minute. I booked a one-way flight. And I think it was easier to book it into Tennessee and then drive across so I could see the sign. But she was like, "You're kidding me. Like, what are you doing in Arkansas?" I go, "I got like 3 or 4 more left. I just got to go." So I had like a 4-day trip completely by myself, no reservations, no nothing. And it was so exciting to see Arkansas because it's so hard to get to. I mean, nothing will ever take you to Arkansas, right? And so just to see that sign was so exciting, and I could see the finish line. But then I got in Arkansas, and I'm like, well, now what? Like, I have no Yelp suggestions, no Google, nothing. I'm just like, wow. And I had this old Garmin GPS. I didn't have Waze. I definitely didn't have a smartphone at the time. And I just like typed in downtown. I think I found a Marriott and just settled up there, crashed there for 4 nights and just took local suggestions. And so I think, you know, one of the interesting things about the book is, you know, partly you're going to see some of the, you know, the uncharted territory, the North Dakotas, the Montanas, all this stuff. But one thing, you know, I hope I will inspire some people too, is to kind of not do too much research. I mean, you want to be prepared, but go talk to the locals. You know, don't be afraid to wing it. You know, you can, sometimes people can prepare a trip for too long and stuff comes up. Just go for it. You know, getting lost is fun. You know, don't be afraid of a weird situation. Go into it. And that's kind of what happened in Arkansas. And you'll read the rest of the chapter. A lot of fun stuff happened. I met some locals and saw some crazy things. I saw this random, I think one of my most random things was just some guy asking me, "Oh, you like baseball?" in downtown Little Rock. And he kind of told me about this Babe Ruth thing. I don't know if you remember it. There was, he's like, "There's an alligator farm like 2 miles that way in the middle of nowhere. And there's a sign where Babe Ruth hit the longest home run ever." And I'm like, "What?" And he goes, "Oh yeah." And so the birthplace of spring training was Little Rock, Arkansas, because the guys like to drink and they thought that the waters had healing, you know, or it would reduce their hangover. And so there was a spring training game, which is now a parking lot for an insurance company, which I loved. And the guy goes, "Yeah, the home plate is still there." So you drive into this insurance company parking lot, and there's a little plate, a tiny sign that says, "This is where Babe Ruth played a spring training game and hit the first ever recorded 500-foot home run." But what made it so, yeah, it's incredible. What made it so interesting to me was there wasn't big marquees or big signs. It's literally like this. And then I'm like, where the heck is the sign where it landed? It's a still running alligator farm. And so I go into this alligator farm, and the guy's like, "You want to pet some alligators?" I'm like, "No, I want to see the Babe Ruth sign." He goes, "Oh, it's over there." And he didn't even charge me. He's just like, just go. And in the middle of this alligator farm, he hit it across the parking lot, over the street, over the fence, into the alligator farm. 550 something feet is just a little sign that's like, "This is the longest or the first ever 500-foot home run."
I think I want to go to Arkansas now.
Yeah, see that and talk to the guy. Yeah. It was crazy. Yep.
I love the part where you talk about conversations that people have when you arrive somewhere about which way did you go.
Oh!
That is so true today. It's the first half an hour of when you arrive somewhere.
It's everything. Now, where do you see that? Now, do you see that up in Maine mostly, or where do you get that a lot?
Everywhere. I'm going back and forth from Maine to New York. So
Yep.
Everyone's asking me, yeah, did you take the Merritt Parkway? Did you take 95? You know, did you take the Route 20, or did you take the Mass Pike? Or
Right. And it's funny because, Cape Cod is a really special part, of my childhood. We would always go there for the summer. It felt like we were driving across country. We'd go to Cape and the grandparents, every single time you'd show up, how was the drive? Good. And then, which way'd you go? How was the bridge? Oh, you took the Bourne Bridge, yeah? Oh, yeah, you got off at Brewster? Oh, no. And they always, it's like every single time. Then someone else comes in the door, same thing. Which way'd you go? It's so.
how is the traffic?
Yeah, how is it? Oh, really? Oh, boy, 40 minutes. No kidding. And you'd sit around and discuss the route. And then I thought it was great because then when I got to California, I'm thinking, oh, California will be the most different, the most exotic. You'd show up at like a little party, and, LA is so big. It's so huge. You could just be driving forever. People go, oh, which way did you go? Oh, did you take Cibola? Did you take this? What'd you do? Oh, you went Fountain? Oh, okay. Next time try the 10. And then these people will get in a debate. No, I take the 5. No, not at that time. Don't. And it's like the same thing as the Cape. It must be universal. Yeah.
It's no surprise that I also read in your book that you're a Seinfeld fan, because that's a Seinfeld.
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
Right
that
there,
is. That could be the next episode if they ever come back. Yeah. Yeah. I have enjoyed Seinfeld, and I think one of the themes too was the episode where Banya is debating with Jerry to go to a new restaurant or an old restaurant. You remember that? It's like, well, with the old one guaranteed a good meal, the new one something exciting. Yeah, I get it, Banya. It could be a risk. Like that whole thing. That's like a huge thing with me. Like, I don't want to see the same thing. If it was new, I loved it. Like, even if the job, sometimes I'd be between a couple of jobs. If it was filming in a new state, I was like, oh, that was a plus. I hadn't been to West Virginia, or I haven't been there. And then sometimes even like with a film festival, like it may not have been the biggest film festival in the world, but, it was in Mississippi, or it was in this place, and I'd get to see that state. So, I love that. And I also kind of like that too. Like when I've moved a lot, over 20 something times, it's crazy. But whenever I go to a new place, I love to see and poke my head in every bar or every restaurant once. Like, even if it's like, oh, that looks like it's going to be crappy. I'm like, yeah, but I want to see it. And it could be new. It could be the most incredible thing inside. It could be a waterfall or something, but you won't know until you go in there. And then even if it stinks, so what? You tried it. You went and saw it. Yeah.
Yeah. So everybody, Jim has a website.
Oh, nice.
JimFord.com.
Yeah.
And you can go there and see all kinds of his acting and things like that, and listen to a podcast that he's done too. I was wondering, Jim, if you could now tell us a little bit more about some of the stunts that you've done, like how you didn't really plan on being a stuntman.
Right.
And tell us about some of your crazy stunts.
Yeah, it really is interesting, because I think the big question a lot of people have is like, how do you get into stunts? How do you become a stuntman? And there's no answer, like with law, with other things, not that it's easy, but there's a path. You could do this, you could do that. If you work hard enough, there's a road. With stunts, it's very, very tricky, because everyone has a different story. Some people are professional gymnasts. Some people are NASCAR drivers, and they'll come in and someone will need a car chase, and that's how the guy gets his foot in the door. Some people are wrestlers, or they were Olympiads. Now, tumblers, gymnasts, and now someone needs something. That's how they get their first job. And for me, I had all the makings of it, because I had a very athletic background and did a lot of extreme sports. I did some gymnastics so I could flip, and I did some diving. I was really good on a diving board, and some wrestling. But that doesn't get you in. There's no real thing to do. And even though I went to a stunt school, the stunt school is more just like, are you curious? Do you want to put this on your resume? It absolutely doesn't translate to getting into stunts. But I was a full-time actor. I got into SAG. I had an agent. I was working steadily for probably a year or two. And I had this stunt school on my resume. And I was so naive. I really just thought like, well, I'm going to go to New York or LA, and they're going to be like, oh, wow, you can act, but you're also athletic? We're just going to offer you a big Tom Cruise action movie, and you'll be doing everything. That's what I thought. So every time I was on set, or I would book a job, even if it was a commercial, I would tell people, hey, like I could do that stair fall, or hey, I could do that fight. And they're like, well, that's really not how it works. And But enough people kept seeing on the resume stunt school, and enough people kept asking about it. Eventually, this random guy who I met on set, he was like, "Oh, I know the stunt coordinator. He's in New Jersey, and he does a lot of stuff. Why don't you send your picture to him?" And I just randomly sent my picture to this guy, P.P. Cozy, who's a huge stunt coordinator. And I didn't know what that meant. Like, what is he going to do with this picture? Like, I didn't know. Is he going to cast me as a skateboarder? I didn't know. I just thought there was only a handful of stuntmen. And randomly, I think it was like a couple months later, I got a call from him that there was a movie with Ed Norton called Pride and Glory. And he had a hard time finding a stunt double for him because he was tall and thin. And so that was kind of my lucky break, was that there's a lot of stunt people that are short and muscular or very big, and they're just brute guys. And there's not a lot of stunt guys that are tall and thin, but there's a lot of actors that are 6'1", 165 pounds. And so there really was a time, and that's kind of what got me my first job. And I thought it'd be a one-time thing, but I did a great job, and we had fights and falls and everything. But then kind of word got out, hey, there's a young kid, he's tall and thin, he did a good job. And so I was still acting, but that's kind of what got me into stunts was, I was stunt doubling actors, and then I could kind of branch out and do some other stuff. And I do have this kind of cool picture. I don't know if I can bring this up. This might be a good one. Let me see here. You like the show Blue Bloods, right?
Yes.
All right, let me see if this works here. Can you see that?
Yes.
So this was from an episode of Blue Bloods. I'd been cast in a couple of roles in Blue Bloods, but then this was doing a stunt for a character on this bridge. And I think this is the bridge that goes to what connects Manhattan to Roosevelt Island? Maybe just the Roosevelt Island Bridge?
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't know if it has a name, but that's the bridge there. And yeah, it was a pretty fun day of work, just pretending I'm contemplating suicide, contemplating jumping, and hanging off the edge of that like that. And they did have me picked with a little rope, so if I were to trip, I would take a little fall, but I wouldn't go the whole way. But
okay.
but that was a nice day in the office just on this day. I think they filmed it on a Saturday when they could block the traffic off. But yeah, that was pretty cool. And this kind of, when I was I think probably 16 or 17, I was lifeguarding on a beach in Massachusetts, and there was a huge bridge, the I-290 bridge, and nobody had really ever jumped off of it. And that was one of my first big stunts, was jumping off the 290 bridge with a couple other lifeguards. And it was so high that people actually thought that we were committing suicide because it was so high up there. And it was a huge thing because, my dad heard about it on the scanner. They had to send people in, I think, for like with a hovercraft to dive, to look for people. But we had to go back and we had to videotape it, of course. So we jumped off the 290 bridge twice. It was actually even a little higher than this bridge. So people were like, "Oh, were you worried?" I said, "No, the I-290 bridge definitely was my training for this day of work." So yeah, there's a lot of different stories here.
Any other pictures to share?
Let me see. I'm trying to think. Maybe let's see. How about Alaska? I got this. Let's see if this works. Is that up there now?
Oh yeah, helicopter.
You can see this. So yeah, this is kind of cool because when I did Arkansas, I think that was 47 or 46, and then I did Alabama. So then it was, now I've only got 2 states left. I've got Alaska and Hawaii. And I said, well, if I had to pick, I said I really wanted to see Alaska because it was the hardest to get to. And I'm telling you, it's not even fair to compare Alaska to like most of the US. It's so big and different. It's another planet. It's just untouched beauty, untouched wilderness. So I have a whole chapter about Alaska and all the different places we saw. And this was a helicopter ride, a little excursion to the top of a glacier. Where you could go and you could see a glacier, and it was crazy. Just the ride up there, you get to see, I think, Denali, the mountain. We get to see that. This is right near Denali National Park. But when you get off, walking around the glacier, walking on a glacier was so crazy. It was like the quietest It was like being in outer space. It was
Huh.
so odd. And if you had a water bottle with you, they'd let you scoop down and get glacier water. So you could scoop it and take a sip of glacier water. And we actually took a bottle and then brought it back to dinner. And they're like, you want water? No, we're good. We're good. We got some glacier water here for the dinner
Now,
table.
this trip to Alaska wasn't a job, was it?
No, no, it was just a big vacation we had planned for a while, a big 2-week thing, and it started with a cruise, a one-way cruise. Now, I'm not a huge fan of cruises. I talk about that a little bit of the book. It's a little too mass tourism for me. You know, they kind of corral you in like cattle and everything. And I don't hate cruises, but we've done one. I really wasn't itching to go back on a cruise. But this cruise was a one-way cruise. So you start in Vancouver and you go up the Inside Passage and you go a lot slower and you get to check off some different cities and you stop at Glacier National Park. And it's like a wonder of the world, this thing. It's like a cul-de-sac of just glaciers and crazy beauty, yeah, and all that. And then when you get to Anchorage, you're done with the ship. They don't care what you do. You can live there, you can stay there, fly back. And so then we spent another week or so, and you kind of can pick out your own itinerary. We took a train ride up to Denali and did all sorts of great stuff there. And yeah, and actually ended up getting married in Alaska while I was there. So yeah, it was just a wild good time.
Now, when I tell people about your book, I tell them that it's a, tell it like it is, no holes barred kind of story.
Yep.
I love the voice that you write in. I have 2 questions about that. First of all, you type it all in, or you do some dictating?
Oh no, yeah, it was all typed. Yep.
Yeah. I wonder about that. Do you think there are authors that do just dictate?
That's really interesting. You know, I hadn't thought about this for years, but I actually thought because my voice and there is a personality, and sometimes we say stuff like frick and dude and later and there are all these kind of ways I was talking. I thought it would be very challenging to type, and so I did. And it's so crazy that I'm thinking about this now. I think when I first started, I was like, wow, this is going to take forever. Like, this is not something I'm going to finish in a month or a summer. I mean, I can't believe this is a marathon. I actually did get a recorder because I felt like I've always told, a story naturally. So I would just tell these stories, and I started out recording them. And then I'm like, oh man, then I'd have to go and do this. And that was so herky-jerky that it was weird that I actually hired this lady for not even a full chapter, where I would record it and send it. She would send it back. I would spend so much time editing what she would do that I was like, no, this isn't going to work out. That I just right off the bat, I almost thought that I was going to dictate the whole book and then write it. It just didn't work out. And so I just had to do it. And what I would do, and I've written a couple screenplays too. I don't like to write my screenplays in Final Draft. That's like a program where it does everything for you as you're doing it, the slug lines, the dialogue, the characters, the descriptions. It's real weird. I actually just like to write with typos. Like, just don't care, no regard, just bang it out real fast, enter, no caps locks, no punctuation. So I just get it out and it flows, and I'll just like bury it and do it. And then I kind of go back and I'm like, oh, it's a mess. And that's where the work is, but at least I get the story naturally. And so, yeah, that was kind of my process. Yeah.
And I know that I would not recommend this book for young people. There's a spot or 2 where it's even a little lewd.
Oh, yeah.
I may go so far as to say.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you thought about your children in the future, or anyone else who's going to read, or your mother, or
I know
isn't that a struggle a little bit?
It's sort of, but it was kind of one of these things where I was like, and I did hold back too. I mean, this was a diluted version, but I was like, I got to tell it. I got to talk about what's on my mind. I have to just talk about what happens in New York, and I just have to say it. And if I offend some people, okay, but I got to do it. I didn't want to candy coat it. And I think for me to find the motivation to go through all the work to do it, I was like, you know what, I really got to go for this. And I think, there's some other books like Anthony Bourdain, like his book was interesting, where it was just so unapologetic, where he's just like, if I piss off some people, well, so be it, but it's going to be my voice. And that's what I wanted. And that's kind of what I think I had to do to get through it, was to just tell the stories. Yeah.
I actually was wondering if, well, first of all, how much do you read and what authors do you read? And was there an author that inspired your style of writing for this book? And maybe it was Anthony Bourdain.
You know, a little bit of it. I don't read a ton, you know. I read a lot of screenplays, or I read a lot of short stories and that type of stuff, but maybe a book a year if I'm lucky. But I like, you know, the biographies, and I like to read about people and their life, and hear about their childhood and how they grew up, and their sort of take on stuff. So there was a book, it's really funny, Jose Canseco wrote a book. Now, I don't know if you know about it, but it was the steroid scandal.
Yes.
And it was just, he was kind of just name dropping like all these people. He was kind of ratting out like all the people that did steroids and just his story. And it was so fun, and it was so light. I mean, I think a lot of people were like, I'm not going to read this. That guy's a meathead, or that's it. But it was so just fun and light to read it that I really liked it. And like some of the chapters, you just read the chapters, it was like buying a Lamborghini. And the next chapter, getting pulled over, going 200 doing the Lamborghini. You know, like these were the chapters. And I was like, it was so fun. It was an easy read. I didn't want to make something like super, super like heavy. So I read that. I read Johnny Damon's book, Idiot. But then an interesting book that I really liked was Joe Bastianich, Restaurant Man. And now his mom is a really famous chef. I think she even has a cooking show, Lydia Bastianich. And he just talks about how hard it is to open a restaurant. Like, you see a guy that owns a restaurant, you assume he's rich, but you have no idea how hard he works and how cheap he has to be, and all the struggles inside. And he has all these great observations about food, and he kind of exposed, much like Anthony Bourdain, you know, all the things you don't realize, like, you know, you don't buy fish on a Monday because that's when it's going bad. And they kind of talk about like how brunch is fake. Like, brunch is not, you know, a good deal. Brunch is the food that has been sitting out for 3 days. They mask it with a sauce because it's like hours away from them throwing out. You know, like, I like those sort of stories where they're like, man, they're going to kind of piss people off with this, but they're just kind of, you know, talking about how it is. And I like that, you know. And so I did like those two books were sort of, so, but, you know, it was my own voice, and kind of like, almost like Bill Burr, or like a Boston, you know, Dennis Leary, kind of like, you know, one of those little edgy comedians that like something like that was sort of it,
Yeah.
you know, all lumped in, and there it was. Yeah.
Is there anything else that maybe you'd like to read, or anything else you want to add?
I could end with, I have a short one towards the end. This would be a good way to end it. So this is kind of one of the things about all 50 states, I'll say, is, you know, what classifies to visit it, and what people, you know, some people do different stuff in different states. And my thing was mailing a postcard. So this last thing is, I think, kind of might sum it up pretty good. And it's right here. So this is just a paragraph. Mailing postcards. Lots of people want to know what qualifies as visiting a state. Some think you have to spend a night or see a statue. I spent at least one night in most states, but I say you have to have an experience. Airports and layovers obviously don't count. You have to get out of the car, touch the ground, partake in some activity. Most people trying to see all 50 states have a thing they do in each one. It might be take a picture, or do a hike, or see the welcome signs. My thing was to send a postcard. I wanted to do something special and unique as social media was exploding. There's something so romantic about paper and pen. It's more substantial than a tweet or a direct message. For less than 50 cents, all these hands and all these people touch, take, and deliver this small piece of paper with a message on it. It's enchanting. Sometimes it only takes a few days, but it travels so far. Still, it always gets to where it needs to be. Do you really think your friends and family give a flying crap about your feet in front of the pool? Well, they don't. They're being nice. We've all seen a sunset too, okay? I promise. The world will be okay without a dozen pictures of you standing in front of it in your new outfit, all right? Mail a postcard and tell them about it. Jot down a quick story. You'll make someone's day. Paper is sexy. Postcards are meaningful and aesthetic. If I could, I would try and have an authentic meal in each state. All the same, mailing a postcard was my thing. It was entertaining to see the post offices too, because they're often located off the beaten path. You get to see the true colors of the town. You get a better feel for the area. more so than just strolling down Main Street. Come on, who doesn't like getting mail?
Oh, I love it. I love it.
Thanks.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I'm hoping that someday you'll find yourself in Lovell, Maine, and maybe an in-person talk at our library. That would be awesome if you could do that someday.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope this summer too. Maybe we get to go play golf too, play around.
Sure, that would be great.
Go see that.
So for our audience, I'd like to just show you the library website, hobbslibrary.org, and you can go there after tomorrow to see this interview and to see all of our other authors. This month, December of 2020, in 2 weeks, on December 17th, we'll have Dave Patterson, also a Maine author. So please join us for that Zoom event. And the word is out. In January, our Meet the Author will be Stephen King. Become a friend of the Charlotte Hobbs Memorial Library to join this very special event. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Jim. Have a great day.
Thank you too. Thanks, everybody.